Good morning, it's Bruce Ferris here. It's the 23rd of October. It's a special edition of This Week in Seattle Real Estate. We're going to dig deeply into the question that always arises at this time of year with our clients who are potential sellers. What is the best time of year to list a property? When do we get the best activity, etc.? So we're going to delve deep into that today. Quite a few stumbles I'm sure I'm going to make throughout the morning here. This is rather unfiltered, but I think for those of our clients that truly need to figure this out, I think it'll be a fascinating journey, unfiltered, as I said. So let's take a look, first of all, at Alan Pope's statistics. We love this guy. He's an appraiser here in Seattle that does a courtesy for a lot of us to put together a graph of what's happening in the marketplace between pendings and newly active listings. And this goes back to as far as 2014 currently. Blue are then those properties coming onto marketplace at that time, and this is for the area 390 to 720. This is basically from Yesler down at the bottom south section of in-city Seattle as far north as 145th, and he's looking at basically all condos and residential properties. So blue coming onto market, we see for the first time right here, March and May, we see pending transactions for the first time eclipsing listings coming onto market since the market crash years before. So this is the moment where everything changed, and then it went a little bit back to higher inventory, and then boom, right here in January, February of 2015, we entered into the escalating market. And as long as we see the red line on top of the blue line, basically, you've got a situation where properties being taken off market faster than they were coming onto market. And that was quite consistent. We had a little bit of a moment here in the latter part of 2016 where inventory indeed eclipsed pendings, and then we went right back into the escalating market. You can see here at 1046 versus 512, twice as many. And here in our lower graph, we see the exact same thing represented in a different fashion. Alan is showing the absorption of inventory ratio, and at that point right here, we're at 200% inventory absorption. Quite stunning. And then finally here, and I'm going to come back and look at this again in a different light, but right now I'm just kind of doing an overview. We finally see in May, June of 2018, the change where all of a sudden the market stopped being quite as incendiary, and there are certain portions where it started declining. And again, we see inventory rising up almost as much as 1,600 and dropping down as low as 396. If we look then historically back at those, what I'll say, the seasonal flow, I think we'll get a little bit of answer here as we're moving forward to what are the best times, what are the least advantageous times. So for simply looking at a ratio between inventory and pendings, and let's say we're going to start in 2015. What's interesting here is your hot spot for 2015, which is, let's say it's March to May, where clearly inventory was well below pendings. Let's go and take a look at that same time frame. We see the same thing here, and we see the same thing here. So those would be incendiary moments in the market where your pendings are outstripping the actives, the newly coming on to market properties. Let's go over here and take a look at what happened in 2018. We saw the same thing taking place, but all of a sudden the market shifted, as we talked about here in May, June, July, August. It did drop back down, and we still saw, interestingly, if I look here at my pendings only, 952 in April over here on the left, 826 to 1046, and then where's April here? 766 to 975, and April 953 to almost 1,000. There's not a huge difference in terms of the numbers of pendings, so at least we know the volume of pendings hasn't been that different regardless of what's taking place with our inventory. But we will see when I go take a look at a price per square foot and also sales price, we'll see a definite hit as a result of this change right here in May, June, and July. So that has to do with that. Let's go take a look at another place. I'm going to put you on hold and head back to another set of statistics. Here we go. So this is another tool. This is a tool for the MLS for agents, and it's called InfoSparks, and we use it quite heavily in our work. And I'm going to look here historically at 15 years back. I'm going to go back to 2006 and take a look at 4 different locations over here on the far right. I'm looking at Seattle overall, and what I do is I look basically from the south end down at Othello all the way up to 145th. And I'm only looking at 3-bedroom, there we go, 3-bedroom properties and residential. So we've got Seattle overall, we've got Seattle Central North, and that's from basically from Ballard to View Ridge across that section up to about, I'm probably going up to about 100th, maybe 90th in that grouping. And then Seattle Central Valley North, that's the section that is the the Madison Valley coming south from Madison, heading down towards I-90. And then finally, I'm picking up I-90 all the way down to Othello and from I-5 over Lake Washington. So I'm trying to break these out into 3 different sections of Seattle. I'm trying to avoid also those areas which are what I'll call Gold Coast properties. They just simply have such a high value that they're not really indicative of the marketplace. So I'm really looking for the canary in the coal mine here to see what the overall trending is. So let's do this, and I'm going to look at a 3-month rolling. If I go to monthly, it's just too jagged, and I will be looking at sales price first. And let's go back to our 3-month. There we go. Now let's go take a look at Seattle overall in that time frame. So here we are in 2006, and the black is Seattle overall. And here is our crest right there at 2007 July. That is when the market changed. And if I look at the Seattle overall market only, and let's take a quick look at that. I'm going to run through this and then come back. 475 is our overall 3-bedroom residential price range. Now, let's go down to the bottom end of it, and it's right there. February 2012, 360 versus 475. There's your overall numbers for that marketplace, and we'll see that reflected or mirrored in the other markets that we're going to review. We quickly see a rise out of that from 360 up to 425, up to 458, and now we're going to come back in a few minutes and we're going to take a look at what time of year these things take place. Here we're almost hitting 500. Here we are, a little bit of a dip there from August into September. Not super big, about 10 grand. And then we have a blip, takes us up to 619. So we jump from 565, 555 up to 619. And then we have a little bit of a drop here, August. And then we have another, and this was a nuts time, frankly. This was a very intense moment in the market. June 2017, crest at 745, adjust downward to 720, and then the final big blip went to 800. So from 745 to 800. And then we hit the May-June correction, and we come overall from 800 down to 725, 750, and then we're at 725 again. Okay. Now let's take a look at the times of year that those kinds of things take place. I'm going to start right about here. Actually, I'm going to take this to a... No, forgive me. I'll do one more different thing here. Price per square foot should be somewhat similar. Yeah, days on market. There's what we want to find out. This is similar. We're looking at month supply. So this was horrendous back then. Let me get this up out of the graph here. Overall, Seattle, 34 days on market, 46 days on market, average almost 50 days on market. That was the crest there at 50 days on market for overall Seattle. You can see who was affected most by this. Seattle Central Valley North really took a hit in terms of that. Let's go back to our sales price and double check that. You can see here, Seattle Central Valley North went from 533 down to 335. And there's 372. So call that 350 on average down there. And here's another low point here at $330,000 from a crest at 533. But look how fast it came back out of that. It's pretty amazing how that portion of Seattle was really intensely scoured over in terms of purchasing and catching up with the rest of the marketplace. Interestingly, Seattle South I-90, let's take a look at that in the purple, its crest was at $430,000 average, and its low point down here was 285. That's also a really big hit compared to what we saw in overall Seattle. And it too enjoyed a rather quick recovery, coming back up, getting back in sync with the rest of Seattle. And here we see up at $740,000 on average, starting out at 339. Our times of years, let's do that really quickly. Let's get away from the crash and get into let's take this to the last 10 years. Actually, I'll take it to 5 years here. And let's get back into Seattle overall. And I think I can go to a 1 month on this now. Yep. I'm looking while I'm talking here. No, I'm going to go back to a 3 month. There we go. Thanks for sticking in there with me. Seattle overall, 495, 497, 495, 500, we'll call it under average quite a bit, or round up. April, 530. August, 565 crest. $10,000 differential between August and October, but October, interestingly, begins a rise here. 555, 560, 573, 600, 619 into February. And we see a little bit of a taper here. 619, 618, 619, 619, 620, we'll call it. Then we bump to 630, 640, back down, and let's do the same thing here. Let's take a look at the August. There's our dip again. July, 641, 639, 628, 620, October, 615, November, 620, and then boom, back up again. Let's do the same thing here. Here's our August. Here's our crest, July. This is 2017. And boom, that very intense crest in 2018 begins the recovery then in June and July. So if I'm going to look at a couple of the things here, I want to take a look at how much time on market historically we've had to look at. And again, this is pretty painful. I think I'll go to months supply, and that'll actually be a little bit more understandable. Let me get this down out of the way. So we had some massive amount of months supply here, half of a year's worth in some of the portions of it. There's 7.2 in the Central Valley after we come out. Now let's get back into our 5-year, because part of the question that my clients want to know is how long am I going to be on market? And the month supply help us do that. And then we're going to go ahead and take a look at days on market. And then finally, we're going to take a look at percentage of list price. I think that's one of the most illuminating pieces we've got here. So August 2014, let's get a little bit further north here. So October, and I think I'll look at overall Seattle here in the black, just under 1 month. And then we go down to just over half of a month. I am going to take this to a 1 month. Seattle overall, just under a month. 0.9. 0.5, half a month. 0.9 again. 1.1, 1.2. 0.4, 0.4. And here we are, September, 0.8. And then interesting, September, October, still under 1 month, down to half, less than half of a month of inventory. And then we began our rise in the May, June, but it only goes up to 2 months overall Seattle, and then drops back down again to just at 1 month. So it's still a very favorable situation, or let's put it this way, a very unpainful situation overall in Seattle. You can see how the rest of the areas basically go along with that. And who's the winner most of the time? Where's the hot spot? It's Seattle Central North. So they're the lowest numbers in terms of their market time, of course. And our purple, being South Seattle I-90 down to Othello, is the one that takes the biggest hit in terms of market time. But that market time isn't super egregious at all. I mean, at 2 months, 1.8. If I look at historic maximum and give it a rolling 6 months, there was a time back in after the crash where we would have, let's go into this zone here, basically 5 months average. Okay, now finally, let's take a look at percentage of list price. This is really important. These are then indicative or indicating the moments in time where properties were selling under or over the list price. And you can see it here, of course, the 2007, and things just crashed down below 100%. And who's taken the big hit? Seattle Central Valley North at 96.5% of sale price. Let's see here. There's Seattle South I-90 is at 97.6. Ballard in the green here at the top of this is the least affected. They're close to 98.6%, which is above. There was an old adage that if something sold within 3% of list price, that was the right price. This is back 20, 30 years ago. People would say that kind of thing. Then we start getting into a recovery, and who's the first one to start having the up blips? It's the Ballard guys. It's the Ravenna kids, right? And they start having some really interesting hits here. 103.8%, 104.6%. But interestingly, everybody else was enjoying it as well in terms of listings. Here's your Seattle Central Valley North. They were second in line in terms of the appreciation and the amount of escalations. 107% in the Ballard grouping, 105% in the Central grouping, and 101% in the Othello I-90 grouping. Overall, Seattle at 103.6. Days on market, we talked about that, I think. Let's take another look at that just for fun. 6 months average. And here's the blip in the valley, 26 days on market. That's just nothing to really be too concerned about. All right, so I'm going to take another look at something here. But what I'm seeing here is that, let's put a hold on this and we'll grab another graph. I'm seeing that Alan Pope's graph is giving me the most indicative or the strongest indicator of typically when is the best moment for being on market, and that would be in this February through May range because of the typical amount of pendings to actives. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on my words, but I'm thinking while I'm talking. And clearly we've changed in that, but what we saw here before was that we haven't really got a huge difference in our amount of pendings. We've gone from 1,087 to 1,046 to 975 to 1,000. I mean, it's within 100 of each other on a yearly basis. But we have lost that incendiary multiple offer market across the board. And that's the next thing I'm going to take a look at now is where are those pockets where things are selling lower or higher than at this point than the original list price, sale price. Well, let's go take a look at that. I'll put you on hold. Okay, here we go. So let's take a look at the last 3 years. I am now going to go on to a monthly clip here, and I'm looking at percentage of list price. Actually, I'm going to take that back to a 3 month, a little bit less. Jagged, here we go. While the computer crunches. Yep, there we go. 3 years. This is the 3-year. So we were February 2016, and again, this is sale price, list price ratios. Obviously quite high. And then they drop down August, September, comes back down. So you don't have as many multiple offers. We're almost basically all at 100% there. We jump up again for the 2017, understandable, and then that big time jump for 2018, and here we go. Market changes, and we get down. Let's go to lowest points here. Seattle overall is at 99%. North End is at 99%.1. 98.3 for the Central Valley, and Seattle Central South is actually doing quite well at 98.8. That's quite remarkable. But it's basically come back up and recovered. We got a little bit of a dip there for the South End at 99.8%. How does that reflect then in terms of pricing? So what has happened then in this market? So in this last 3 years, actually I'm going to take it to 1 year now, and I am going to take it to a 1 month. And I think that's what I want to look at. Overall, Seattle, 810,000. 800. Here's our I'm sorry, I grabbed the wrong one. 810, 787, 785, 750, 760, 715 overall. So there's your low point from April of 2018 to February of 2019, back up to 755, and currently it's 715. If I look at a 3-year on that, that's 715 is down from 810. So call that a $100,000 differential from that point. But just for perspective, don't forget where it has come from here since August 2014. If you're a longtime property owner, that's what has taken place. This last shift is somewhat inconsequential. Central District on the rise at this point, looking like 773 to 830. Ballard area 764 to 750, a little bit of a dip there. And then the South End taking the hit in terms of people pulling back from going down and looking at houses down there. Now we've just had a slew of properties that sold, and our Ballard listing sold healthily over a list price, 815 to I believe 890 if I recall correctly. So finally, let's go take a look at this last graph that I wanted to prepare and figure out where things are and are not selling. I need to find that, so hang on for a second. Forgive me for the break. Got it. It's this right here. And so this is the last 90 days, and I use, if you know me, you know I do this over and over and over again. This is a criteria that I use constantly of 3 bedrooms, 1.75 to 2 baths built prior to 1980. And my area that I pull from is right all over Seattle, basically, to get a good idea. And what I want to do here is find out, let's see if I can do this without losing it. Well, do it like that. Here we go. Now, those are the properties that have sold in the last 90 days in that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play with the criteria on that. Forgive me. There we go. Let's take a look. So we've got 276 that have sold in the last 90 days. I want to know how many sold in 40 days or more. 67 of those. I'm going to write these down while we're talking. 67 plus. And let's look at where that takes place. Interesting. I would wager that these are some of the more expensive properties on market. Just by, you've got an interesting twist of properties that are lesser priced, but also properties that are more what I'll call aesthetic value properties that are out here in these areas. Interesting. Okay, let's go to the middle grouping. Let's go 10 to 40. And we got 72 of those. This is good. I don't mean to be doing this, but it's coming out exactly the way my other set of numbers will show us in a few minutes. So here's our middle grouping here and where they're located. And then finally, let's go to our 10 days or less. And we have 143 of that. So 1/2 of the market, essentially, I know I'm rounding up and down egregiously, but allow me to. 143 listings, 1/2 of the market is selling in 10 days or less. Let's go with 8 days or less and see what that does. 133, wow, 133. So you still have a very strong market out there. And if I look at those properties very quickly, let's see where those are located. There they are. And if I look at the statistics on that, take this up to here. Forgive me, I gotta do it this way. Get up there like that, hit results. And this is something I do on a daily basis. I'm gonna go ahead and do a print and take a look at the statistics for those very quickly. There we go. Our sale price list price ratio down here at the bottom is 104%. And that's a 784 to 815. 785 to 815. 450 per square foot. 6 days average on market. Well, I throttled that with the 8 days or less, but I think that's quite telling that 1/2 of the market has this number. Let's go back and take a look at the half of the market, the other part of the market that doesn't have that number, and see what they do very quickly here. So let me go to criteria and go to 10 days, 10 to 40. Got 72 on that, right? Search all. And sure enough, when we do those numbers, we are at 98.28 with an average of 24 days on market. 786, 787 roughly, dropping to 753. The original list price to final sale price ratio was actually at 96. This 98.28 is the last list price after they've price dropped. So here's your original price of 767 on average, and then 753 final price. They've come down on average of, let's just say, 15 grand, and they end up at 96.12% of 787, 24 days on market. Our price per square foot at 416 per square foot is lower than our price per square foot here. And this proves the old, or supports the old adage that an underpriced, well-priced property will sell higher, and 450 would do that. Now, it's entirely probable that this 450 is a better property as well, and the 716s are not. But that's what that is. Let's continue on here. And finally, let's take a look at those properties that were 40 days or more on market. That's 78 days average market time. 854. Let's take a look at this here. Your start price for those properties that were 8 days or less was 784. Your start price for those properties that were 78 days on market was 854. And they end up at 90% of sale price list price ratio between the original price and the final sales price. 97.36% between the final list price and the final sale price. But 854 dropping to 792. Forgive me for being really sloppy here, but let's just call that 57,000. 50. Gosh, my math. It's early. 770 here. Final sales price. There you go. 67 of those. I think that's pretty stunning. I had no idea I would see these numbers. So one half of the market sold 10 days or more, 96%, 90%, and then one half of the market sold in 6 or 8 days or less at 104%, and a rather significant uptick in price from 785 to 815. So trying to solve the issue of when's the best time to list, probably right in here. Is there a huge amount of hit when you listed those other times? We do see some downticking taking place, and anybody's guess as to what's going to happen here in the next 6 months as we have the election, etc., coming on. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think we've kind of hit as much as we possibly can. Oh, forgive me. There is this one last one. Hang in there with me. This is my daily statistics tracker that we do, and I track this on a daily basis, and we put this out once a week to all of our clients. You can always see it at my blog here, and I've got a sheet that is publicly available. You can review this. What this is, forgive me, I'm getting to the point where I can't really talk. I'm taking a sip of water here, and I'll be right back with you. This is my canary in the coal mine. This tells me on a daily basis and a weekly basis what's really taking place in the central Seattle marketplace. So again, I'm looking at properties from the south end up into the north end. I'm staying out of those very expensive neighborhoods, looking at 3 bedrooms, 1.75, 2 baths, and built prior to 1980. Greens over here on the left are the newly active, those that have come on market in the last day, in the last 7 days, and are total on market. Pending inspection, those are properties that went from active into a pending inspection contingency, meaning that they were not a multiple offer where somebody waived their inspection. Here, those are just simply in the pending status, and that includes both those that are pending inspection before and those that had fast market time. And then specifically those properties that went to either pending inspection or pending in 6 days or less. And that tells me then the portion of those properties that are being taken off market here over the left, what's the portion of those that are going off in 6 days or less, indicating a competing market of some sort. And then the final totals, averages, and so on over here. Bright green means that it is a very low number. It means that it's dropped down to the bottom end of it, and bright red means they are at a top end number. So let's go take a look down here on the left and look at those moments where we've had some super high inventory. This is a real good example here. This is post July 4th. So prior to July 4th, we had a lot of listings coming on, trying to get on the market before the end of the year, end of the month there, and then we went into a true vacuum of listings coming on market, and then right after that we had the typical surge. So that's pretty typical. Then we had another drop after that surge took place, and then we go back into a fairly typical weekly cycle. We're up, we're down, we're up, we're down, we're up, we're down. So it's not a big deal. We are currently, though, in the down inventory in that grouping. Our pending inspections, when I see high numbers here versus high numbers over here in this more brown, that indicates that it's a little bit less of a seller's market and a little bit more balanced market. And we see that here. Now let's go down to see a moment where we saw properties consistently going into 6-day status. So that time frame right there was a more seller-friendly moment. And let's see if we can find another one here. Here is the June moment where we had that taking place. Okay, now let's go back up to the top and talk about where we are. What are we doing right now? Well, let's go to my stats. Total pending PI, it's healthy at 589. It's not incendiary. It's not bright red. But my weekly pending and pending inspection relationship to current active coming on market has been over 100% for the last 4 days straight in terms of the overall, looking back for a week. That's a seller-friendly moment. And our weekly 6-day at 34, 32, 31, 31, 32, 36. So we've got an entire week here of properties that are going into a 6-day, going off market within 6 days. And I'm sorry, that's 30% plus of the total properties being taken off market are being taken off market within 6 days. It's hard to say that, but I think you'll get that. And then finally, again, reds over here, we've got over 60% of those properties that are coming onto market are being taken off market. There are that many that are being taken off market simultaneously. I think you understand that, right? And then I also do a thing called Market Watch. This is I just take a copy of from NWMLS, and they have fairly similar numbers. One of the things I'm always looking at over here on the right-hand side is the contingent. How many properties have gone into contingent status? And that means that sellers accepted an offer whereby a buyer was saying, I'm going to have to sell my property in order to buy your property. In the seller's market, you have very low numbers for that, and it has been consistently, here's 2, there's 1, there's 3, there's 3, there's 1, etc. 3. So we're seeing under 4 consistently in terms of those contingent. So that's the state of the market right now, and I know that's a lot to process, but let's see, what are we at? We are at 36 minutes. Holy smokes, that's a lot of stuff. But if you're thinking about selling and you hung in there, I think you've got a pretty good view as to what's going on, and you also have a pretty good idea that we take a pretty unvarnished look at the marketplace on behalf of our clients. So with that, it's Bruce Ferris. I wish you a great week, and thanks for hanging in with me. Give us a call if you need to talk. 206-730-3285. Team@BruceandDonna.com is our email. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.